Well, I'm sure you're wondering what a telomere is. If maybe, probably most of you know what it is already, and you're like, what does this have to do with your channel? What's a telomere? Why did you lead with that? That's a weird thing to talk about. So telomeres, I wanted to talk about them because it's perhaps one of the most interesting linkages we have between physical activity and or inhibiting maybe activities that have conventionally been known to be bad for your health, like smoking or excess alcohol consumption, or just alcohol in general, and how that affects health. Okay. And this linkage with telomeres is one that, again, it's probably the most interesting. It's the most conclusive, I guess, among all the other things. So other things being like systemic inflammation, which is related to this, obviously direct impact on some cellular health, whether that's, let's say something like smoking, right? The carcinogens that are in smoking, but this linkage, especially related to exercise, is really interesting. So first of all, what's a telomere? A telomere is, if you look at a strand of DNA, right, in a mitotic cell, a cell that can divide, that cell has the capability of replicating, right, dividing. Okay. Now, every time a cell divides, it gets a little bit shorter in its telomere. So the best way I can describe this, and this is a way of protecting the DNA, so we don't want to have the DNA get damaged. So it's kind of like this protective cap. But it's like a pencil eraser, right? That, when you bought a new pencil, it's nice and, right, you got a full eraser there. But over time, as you erase, the eraser gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you get down to the metal tip, right? And then if you're like me, you tear your math homework when you're a kid, whatever. But that's what a telomere is. It's almost a scorecard for how long that DNA strand can continue to divide. And the idea is when you run out of telomere, the cell can no longer divide, and so therefore it can't. If you think about it being the tissue, the tissue can't really rejuvenate. It's a linkage potentially to death. That sounds pretty awful, but it is, right? I mean, that's just kind of how it works. Now the good news is when a cell can't divide anymore, it's not going to do anything. But again, it loses the ability to divide, and so the ability to recover, the ability to rejuvenate a tissue, whatever it might be. That's going to be a big loss, put it mildly. Something like cancer, a cancer cell, though, unfortunately has an unlimited amount of telomere length. It gets added to that cell, and that's why it's hard to kill these cells. One of the reasons. I won't pretend to be an expert on cancer oncology, but that's one of the things that does happen, though, in these cells that continue to replicate. So what does this have to do with exercise, sports science, nutrition science? Well, I first saw some research 2009. I'm sure there was some before that. First time I saw it, it was actually brought to my attention by, at the time I was working on my graduate work, and one of the professors there pointed out, and that was pretty interesting. And I've since seen these studies that have been kind of a consistent flow of these coming out, of consistent research coming out that supports this linkage. So this, I'll put a link to this study in the description. This is just one that I saw recently. It made me think of talking about this. It was a study from this year. That time I'm recording this, 2020. Age and Aging is the journal, and I'm not going to say the first author's name correctly, but Vyas, maybe. I'm going to go with that, et al. And it's called Telomere Length and its Relationship with Lifestyle Behavioral Factors, variations by sex and race and ethnicity. And so what this study does with 50-year-old plus individuals, 70% non-Hispanic white, 30% minority groups, Black, Hispanics, groups that they didn't really identify into a subcategory. And they looked at telomere length, also among ethnic groups, among the sexes, men and women, and also among different levels of physical activity, smoking, frequency, and alcohol consumption. And so the idea is the longer the telomere is, the longer you'll be healthy, the longer you could live, hypothetically. And I'll just read you the key points I was taken from this study. I think that's safe to do so, copyright-wise. And so the first one is higher physical activity was related to longer telomeres, why higher alcohol and smoking use was related to shorter telomeres. So this is not a shocker. Again, it's just some interesting linkage, physiological linkage between, what your doctor always tells you when you go there, like you don't gain weight or lose some weight, stop drinking so much alcohol, don't smoke. Second one, race, ethnicity, and sex influence the strength and direction of associations of lifestyle behavior factors in telomere length. So like in this study, found that Black women in terms of the effect of smoking, it was much greater of an effect on telomere length than it was non-Hispanic whites, for instance, where non-Hispanic white, I think it was women, if I remember, maybe just non-Hispanic white men and women, had a more favorable response to exercise in terms of their telomere length. Doesn't mean exercise wasn't favorable, but it was more so. And I think this is what the next point is actually. Association of higher physical activity and longer telomeres was stronger among non-Hispanic whites, okay, not just women, compared to minority groups. And then associations of daily alcohol consumption, shorter telomeres were strongest among black and Hispanic women. And the association of heavy smoking and shorter telomeres was strongest among black women. So again, you see these interactions, where you see some intersection of race and activity or habits, and how that may affect different ethnic groups even differently, and different sexes among the different ethnic groups differently as well. What I wanted to point out, obviously for the purpose of my channel, is the link with physical activity. And in the study, they looked at daily physical activity, broken down over different two main categories, moderate or high. So 30 METs, and if you're not familiar with MET is, but 30 METs hours per week versus very low, right? Basically under 30. And just looking at the numbers, which doesn't mean anything because we can interpret numbers different. That's why we have statistics to determine whether things are meaningful. Though they do some nice plotting here, force plots on showing the benefit of exercise in terms of telomere length. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise at all. But this, this study this isn't the only one that exists that supports this linkage between telomere length and physical activity and exercise. The more people exercise, the more, this is why, the more physical activity even in general has been linked more so to longevity than just exercise. So if you sit a long time and you exercise, that is helpful, but it's not near as helpful as just being physically active. So 30-minute blocks in particular seem to be an interesting kind of cutoff. The more you sit around for 30 minutes, the faster you die. The more frequency of sitting, the faster you die. It's all about blood flow. So anyway, I thought I'd share this article with you and this linkage of telomeres if you're interested. There's quite a few studies now. I don't really have an exact number for you, but I saw this one. I thought it was interesting to talk about, bring it to your attention if you're interested in this kind of physiological linkage. The bad news is you can't add to your telomere length. So if you made some bad lifestyle decisions early, you've been a smoker for 20 years, there are some positive things that can happen to the lung tissue, but it is presumed, right, that you won't be able to add telomere length, but you can preserve what you have. So you can make a complete 180 going from being sedentary and smoking, whatever it might be, and going the other way and preserving what you have left by making good choices from then out. So it's not, I don't think it's an issue of, oh, I should just give up because I was doing this or whatever. It's more of an issue of, well, what do you have left? I mean, cup is half full, the cup is half empty. You decide, but you still have it within your power to make good decisions, then do so in order to save that telomere length. All right. If you're interested in more videos in exercise, sports science, nutrition science, be sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video if you liked it, of course. And if you have a comment, drop below. If not, I will see you in the next video.